what the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
I think that when President-elect Trump talks, we need to listen. We need to take him very seriously. I never take his threats lightly. At the same time, we can't take debate. And I think also that we're extremely strong as a country. I think our economy is strong. I think our people are strong. And I think we'll never back down.
Okay, that's Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly speaking earlier today, obviously referring to Donald Trump's, I will call them threats, whatever, musings, if you will, yesterday. James Mennie, Montreal Gazette, is on the line. Jim, all of a sudden, we went from snowball's chance in hell. Now we have ministers standing up. So it took a while, but it looks like they kickstarted this thing.
We will fight them in the streets. We will fight them in the landing grounds. We will fight them in the hockey rinks.
Easy,
we will fight
Jim.
them on the soccer pitches. Aaron, I have to tell you, I'm glad. I know you do the show sitting down. It's not often that I raise my glass. I tip my hat to Francois Legault, but he too said the same thing Melanie Joly said. Even though today seems to be, as you quite rightly point out, today seems to be the day where all of a sudden Donald Trump has, what he says has become a litmus test for the politicians to display their patriotism, their love of Canada, their resolve not to give in to Donald Trump, which is all very well and good. And I'm so glad that you guys essentially recited Legault's message saying, as Madame Joly said, you can't, don't play his game. And as you pointed out as well, that the president of Mexico decided to have fun showing a 300-year-old map where the United States of America is referred to as Mexican America. So it just goes to show that, if you don't play this guy's game, all of a sudden things go into context. But I got to tell you, Aaron, I think to really put things into context, I know you didn't have a chance to do it today, maybe tomorrow, just in terms of Donald Trump's speech on annexing, economically Canada, you should, book a marine biologist to come on and talk about another big chunk of that same speech where Donald Trump, President-elect of the United States, said that windmills were killing whales. Okay? Let's be clear here. Because when you look at Donald Trump, you can't look at him à la pièce, as we say in these parts. Okay? Because that's what happened in the last campaign. It was an expression called sane washing. In other words, Donald Trump could stand on stage and try and take his pants off over the top of his head, okay? But the reporters covering the event would only focus on his remark. Well, you talked about, economic growth and increasing Americans. They deliberately ignored what Donald Trump's fruitcake personality was actually doing in front of hundreds of thousands of people, but you didn't notice that in mainstream media. And until that is pointed out to certainly Canadians and to our listeners, you've got to put these things in context. Will Donald Trump's threats be followed through on? I honestly believe there is a huge faction in the United States, in Washington, D.C., that knows that the status quo works better for the U.S. than Donald Trump melting off, doing some stream of consciousness rally in South Carolina. By the way, just an interesting sidebar here, Aaron. Did you notice there's a report today that Canadian exports are through the roof? That Americans are buying up whatever they can from the U.S. From us because A, of the exchange, and B, against the threat, the price is going to go up because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, actually, I'd seen a report. CNN had a report go by that I mentioned that says more Americans have decided to plant their own fruits and vegetables now because they sense it's going to start costing more if he follows through. So. Well,
they're snapping up whatever we have for sale right now. So he's already created a small economic boomlet. All right, but all that said, this is the problem with Donald Trump. And we saw this in the first 4 years when he was president. All it takes is a new shiny thing, Aaron, and he'll waddle off in the other direction and start talking about that. There is no plan. There is no strategy. But as I say, Francois Legault, Melanie Joly, they have it figured out. Don't play this guy's game. And whenever you can, push back. Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, that was the approach she took. All of a sudden, Donald Trump isn't saying boo about Mexico. Ever since she sent that letter to him, he has kept it. He's claimed she said she's closing the border, at which point she promptly held a press conference and says, no, I'm not closing the border. And that was it. Case closed. If you play that game, if you react to Donald Trump, you're giving him more oxygen, and that is something that we should not be doing as far as I'm concerned. And in the meantime, we can't lose sight of the fact that it's going to be a long 4 years, but he's not the only guy. He's not the only. He's in fact, I would respectfully submit that Donald Trump's grasp on power in the United States of America is perhaps most strong in Donald Trump's imagination. But the minute Donald Trump starts costing people money, and believe me, screwing around with trade relations with Canada will cost people in the U.S. money, you may see a very, very hasty change in policy.
By the way, there one other thing, hats off to Claudia Sheinbaum. Trump has gone on when he talks about Mexico beyond just people streaming across the border, according to him, the drug trade, right? So today, if I read this right, Jim Shea, the president of Mexico came out and said, hey, you know what, the drug trade, how about you control the gun trade? Because apparently 90-some-odd% of guns in Mexico cross the border from the U.S. into there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm starting to think this is what has to happen. And I guess political leaders will begin to realize this.
Honestly, what I like was her tone, because she actually mentioned that the issue of firearms in her initial reply to Donald Trump. And that's the thing. It's, don't thump your chest. Don't get into a contest with this guy over who's the toughest person in the schoolyard. Yeah. He thrives on that. But when you treat him as the figure of ridicule that he deserves to be, that he has proven himself to be. Remember, this is the only U.S. president, as far as I can tell, who addressed the UN National Assembly and was laughed at. And no, they weren't laughing with him, Aaron. They were laughing at him, saying that, his administration was the greatest the country had ever seen. So let's put things in their context. Yes, Donald Trump is going to say whatever the hell Donald Trump wants. It is incumbent on us, not just our politicians, but ourselves, to say, listen, this guy is not going to get away with it. This guy is not going to push me around. I'm not an American citizen. And remember, as I say, he hasn't even been sworn in yet, but I'm telling you, even from his own side, even from, the MAGAs or the so-called Republicans or, the people who support, Trumpism, the minute he starts causing them problems, believe me, you'll see changes in policy and see it very, very quickly.
All right, let's talk about what's going on here. You need a scorecard now, of course, to try to figure out who's going to end up running for leadership of the Liberal Party. Dominic Anglade today. Oops, slip of the tongue. Yeah. Wow. Dominic LeBlanc today, and a lot of people thought he had an excellent chance, right? He is a Trudeau confidant from way back. He said, no, I'm done. I'm not going to be running. Melanie Joly, who'd been very quiet over the past couple of weeks, today suddenly appearing and talking about the Donald Trump threat, if you will, as well, without necessarily saying, although I had the impression from watching her today on News Channel, she's very seriously thinking about this. That's the impression I got. So she's a maybe. And Frank Baylis, who we're going to have on in about an hour and 50 minutes from now, a former Liberal MP, is so far the only one who has officially declared. So what do you make of all this?
Well, I have to tell you, it's interesting because when you see Dominic LeBlanc and you're just talking about Melanie Joly and certainly Mark Miller, these are three people who are very, very closely associated with Justin Trudeau, and there is no denying that there is toxicity by association that hanging. And we even discussed this when we were talking about Trudeau's remarks about Chrystia Freeland by pointing out she was a close confidant and a collaborator and a partner. He's basically torpedoing her chances to lead the party or to lead the party to victory because she can't turn around and disassociate herself from Justin Trudeau. And I have to tell you, as I mentioned to our listeners yesterday, we talked about Frank Baylis months ago when he first started making noises about being interested in perhaps leading the party. But I got to tell you, talk about a guy who was 25 light years away from Justin Trudeau. Talk about a guy who has all kinds of business credentials. It's going to be a very, very interesting interview, I am absolutely sure. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how Mr. Baylis fares in the middle of a federal Liberal Party, which, to say the least, is in disarray. The caucus meeting today was basically turned into a thank you for your service get-together for Justin Trudeau. But the consensus is we have got to get this figured out sooner. We have to have someone in place by the time the House resumes. We have to have a leader in place locked and loaded and ready to go. And I really think we may see some perhaps radical moves on the part of the federal Liberal Party between now and perhaps even this weekend, just to get this process up and running and convincing the people of Canada, or convincing perhaps Liberal supporters who have turned their backs on the party because of all of its travails, that, you know what, no, we're not out of it yet. We're still here. We know what to do, and we're going to survive this. So, yeah, going to be very, very interesting. And like I say, I, for one, am going to be very interested to hear from Mr. Baylis.
All right. Coming up at 5:30, just after our news. Jim, thank you.
Dr. Matt.